everybody. This is the podcast host, Chris Baker. And you're watching Tell Me Your Story. Today's special guest to tell his story is Obie Shelton. We're going to do like how we always do. We're just going to jump into it and, just start from the very beginning, the childhood. Where'd you grow up at? What was it like as a kid?
Yeah. My childhood actually was spent in a place called Anderson, Indiana. I was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, because my mom was visiting her family while my dad was in school in Indiana. And so she had me, and it wasn't until I think I was maybe 2 months old or so that I came back. She brought me back on a train to see my dad. And so I grew up in Indiana as he was studying actually for the ministry. And so I stayed there till I was 5. And then he got a job as a pastor in Cleveland, and that's what brought me to Cleveland at 5 years old. And so I stayed in Cleveland until like 13, and then I moved to Mansfield when he got a job as a chaplain in the Ohio Reformatory. But early on, I think what I remember is that my dad told me that he noticed very early that I was hearing music differently than other kids. This was, they had records, the old school records back then, and he would put them, he brought on a little record player. And he said that before I could walk, I knew how to take the needle and drop it on the on the record. And he said, I would just sit there and like just listen to the music. And he goes, that boy's hearing stuff. And so he didn't make much money, but he would go to the Goodwill, Salvation Army, and he would get every kind of record that he could find. Classical music, Disney, Warner Brothers, all of those, like a lot of the Warner Brothers cartoons were put onto records. So I remember Daffy Duck and Porky Pig, and he had these, they had these adventures on the record, and you could play one side and turn it over, and I'd play it. So all of that kind of like came into me. So I, growing up, listening to the storytelling and the rhythms and everything like that, which would eventually kind of express itself in music, and then broadcasting. So
well, I was thinking too. Also, as I'm hearing you say it, your imagination at that time was probably going through the roof as well.
Yeah, I used to, like most kids play, but I remember my grade school teachers, when I looked at my report card, they said, Obie keeps daydreaming, because I would just kind of, I was creating stories, and I would have music, going, and I would create a story, and I would hear dun, 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 and I would add the music to it. So that's the kind of kid I was. As I was telling you before we started going, I wanted to be an athlete, but I was not blessed with athletic ability or an athletic body. But I saw guys, playing football. And from the first time I saw football, I loved how you looked in the uniform. And this was, during the Jim Brown years. And growing up in Cleveland, seeing them, I loved the poses that the game had your body making. Like when you're catching a pass, I loved how that looked. I remember Gary Collins, Paul Warfield, all these old Browns guys, and so I loved it. And went to the Goodwill, of course, and got some football gear, but my parents never got me involved in like Pee Wee League or anything like that. And to me, it looked easy because I saw it on TV, and I said, "Oh yeah, they're just breaking away, they're having fun." And it wasn't until I got to junior high, 9th grade, or in Ontario, Ohio, a little country town, and I'm thinking, these country boys don't know nothing. Man, they gave me the ball, and I remember I tried to put one of my moves or something that I saw a guy do. I saw Jim Brown do. And this guy plastered me. Boom! I mean, he cleaned my sinuses out. They cleaned on his jersey. He hit me so hard, and I'm whoa. And the other picture to paint for you was that I got hit by a car when I was 7 years old, running across the street in Cleveland. And in the summer, I had put on some weight. So I was a chubby little kid and, one of the smaller ones on the team, only Black kid on this team. And I had grown up in Cleveland's inner city. So I had grown up in a school that was, pretty crowded, maybe at the time, maybe 90% Black. And then I went to Ontario and I was the only Black kid in the school. So that was a culture shift for me, right?
I could
Um,
imagine. That
yeah,
definitely had to be a difference to you.
yeah. But what I had going was that when I was in my parents had me in a private school, a Christian school, when I was in preschool, right before I started fifth grade, and that I was all that was an all white school in Indiana. So I had that exposure, right? Um, and so when I went to Cleveland, it was kind of weird to me, like, wow, look at all these Black kids. And but then I got used to that, and then I had to go to then I grew up and went to Ontario, where I was back again in this in an all-white community, and in a rural community where I was used to sidewalks and stuff. And we we got on our bikes the time that we moved, and I rode down the road with no sidewalks. There were cows down the road. And I wow, this is a different kind of life. But I thought that we really made it because these were the kinds of homes that I had seen growing up on TV. And I said, wow, we're really doing well. So that takes you up to high school.
I mean, just going from living in this city and then
Mhm.
moving out to the country, how was that for you?
Well, I was used to being able to ride my bike, around and get around pretty well. You go to the grocery store, you go to the library. Well, in the city, you're talking a few blocks. Out there in this rural community, you're talking miles, right? And plus you don't have sidewalks. I remember one time I tried to wash our coaches wanted us to wash our pants for the game, because in ninth grade we didn't have game uniforms. We just we washed our practice uniforms. So we didn't have a washer and dryer yet in my house. So I figured I would just ride my bike to the laundromat. And it was in the evening, and man, these cars were whizzing by me, because it was a road where the speed limit was like 50. And I'm riding on the side of the road, and I'd be hitting these rocks, and I had my pants over my shoulders, and I had no idea that it was going to take me as long as it took me to get to the laundromat, which was maybe a mile, 2 miles away. And then I washed them as well as I could and walk back. But so that was a transition for me to living out in the country. They had a different accent than what I was used to. Um, they I grew up and my parents would talk about, I'm going to wash my clothes. Now the guys, when I would grew up, it was in Ontario, they'd say, you're going to wash your clothes, or you're going to wash the clothes, right? That's kind of like a West Virginian accent. So I wasn't familiar with that. And I would talk about, my mom was from Philadelphia, so we talked about our uncles and our aunts, right? And when I said that word, people said, oh, your aunts, because they all said aunt, in Mansfield. So that was, that took some adjusting or getting used to, because I said, no, she's my aunt. And they said, aunt, oh, I'm sorry. So, and then just the cultural thing of a lot of kids had never been around a Black kid before, and they wanted to feel my hair, and they wondered what's what makes him laugh, and all those things. So it was a cultural experience. And then I did have an older brother and a younger brother. My older brother was in the high school, I was in the junior high, and then I had a younger brother in the elementary school. And so each of us had our own assimilation journeys.
Yeah, it doesn't sound too bad.
Yeah, well, I mean, it wasn't bad. Um, it What was interesting back in, we're talking early 70s. Um, people liked me. They felt that I was funny. At the time, I had memorized all of Bill Cosby's records, um, and could recite them. And so they thought that was cool. Um, it was interesting that my friendships with females, though, could only, they would only go so far. Um, I would be attracted to someone, or someone would be attracted to me, but they would be concerned about what their parents thought. Um, so there was just that uh, there was that kind of that tension there, that I would go out to an event, or like a football game, and all the other, the guys in my class, they got the girlfriends beside them, and they got their arms around them. And if anybody sat next to me, I better not put my arm around them, or they might move away, and not because they didn't like me, but because they were afraid of what other people might say.
Yeah.
So there were some awkward times. Now my older brother did have a girlfriend, um, and remember, there were a couple girls who liked me, but it just never clicked. So that I kind of missed out on when I was in high school. And what was interesting was, I remember there was a black girl who moved into the school for about, oh, she was only there for like a semester or so. Family moved in. And of course, when she showed up, everybody goes, "Oh, Obie, you see, did you see her?" And I go, "Yeah, I was, I wasn't really attracted to her. She was okay, but I wasn't like, it wasn't, it wasn't like a match. We had different ways of communicating and stuff like that." So that's what it was like for me.
All right, let's go into the high school experience.
Yeah. In high school was when I started to get or started to show my ability as a musician. Did you know I play a violin? I don't know if you knew that. People in Cleveland know that I play a violin, right? That's one of my signature things. And so I had been studying in Cleveland and had shown some promise there. And then when I came to Ontario and Mansfield, I started studying with a music teacher there. But it was in high school when I started. I remember the band teacher asked me if I could learn how to play an upright string bass, because they didn't have a string program there. They didn't have an orchestra, and they needed somebody to play the upright bass. And so I kind of taught myself how to play. I showed up for the band rehearsals, and I kind of learned. I don't know if people know bass clef. It's a little different than treble clef. And so I learned how to play this upright bass. And then he said, "Well, could you play like the electric bass in our jazz band?" So I picked up the electric bass and started playing. And after a while, I started picking that up. And after a while, I started getting really good. And so it's funny, our band, we were in a, during those years, we had a lot of good players in that jazz band. They called it the stage band. And we started playing around other events and at different schools. And people say, "Man, who is that bass player?" And so that's kind of where that grew. The other thing that happened was, I had listened to R&B radio growing up in Cleveland, in the inner city, right? So I was kind of that was kind of in my experience, in my culture. And so when I go to
Hold on,
Ontario,
give us a feel.
huh?
Who were you listening to, like R&B?
Well, yeah. Well, at first, I listened to whatever my brother listened to. Now he was listening to Wixie, which was the kind of the pop, top 10 station.
Yeah.
So I was listening to a little bit of Beatles and stuff like that. But then as I got into junior high and got to be about 13 years old, Motown kind of hit the scene. My brother started listening to Motown. So I started listening to Motown and the Temptations and the Four Tops and all of them. So that kind of became the thing for me, and James Brown.
Oh, yeah.
So just as I was getting into that, my family moved. So I go to Mansfield, and they're listening. This is around the Woodstock time, so the Santana.
Jim,
Um, I'm trying to think. There was a group called the Edgar Winter Group, which was more rock and roll. That was when people were getting into long play albums and not into top 40, 3-minute stuff that was Motown. But I did notice a difference when there was this group called the Ohio Players, and they had a song called Pain, which to me sounded like really cool. And I remember in our band room, they were playing songs by, there was a group called Emerson, Lake and Palmer, which was like a kind of a jazzy, kind of rock, jazz rock kind of thing. And then they were playing Deep Purple was the name of a group back then. And they're going, man, isn't this some cool stuff? And they liked it because I could play Smoke on the Water, and I could play that on
yeah.
my on the bass guitar. I could play it actually on my violin. So they thought that was really cool. But then I said, oh, listen to this, listen to this. And I put on the Ohio Players, and they're like looking at each other like,
Who's that?
what is this? Man, let's put something else on, So that I remember that day because I'm like, oh, okay. So your music you think is cool for me, but my music isn't like cool for you. Okay, all right. I'm kind of getting the drift here. So that I learned rock and roll, but the other thing that was significant was that I was practicing being a DJ at my house. My dad had gotten me these little recorder. These were the early days. This was before you had the little cassette recorders. They actually were little like reel-to-reel things that, these were the early ones. And so I would pretend like I was a DJ. And I'd say, here's the sounds of Motown with the Temptations. And I put a record on, you hear the Temptation. Well, my dad heard me doing this, and he said, oh, you're pretty good at that. Why don't you, you could do that. So I remember our principal would come on every day and give the morning announcements. And he was really boring, morning announcements for October 17th. And I remember sitting up in my class and going, that's so boring. And one of my teachers said, well, why don't you do it? And so she was doing it really just to shut me up. But I thought about it and I go, why don't I try it? So I went down in the office and I asked him, could I do the morning announcements? And he said, okay, as long as you don't say anything inappropriate, So I had my records on and I would take requests, for each morning, and I would do the announcements, and I would kind of make jokes about them, I would take the announcements and try to make them a little funny and do them like a DJ, and it became a thing. And so the school kind of turned on to it, and they'd say, oh, here Obie doing the announcements. And right before I left, I'd gotten a music scholarship to go to Ohio University, a partial scholarship to play violin. And one of my teachers said, the last day of school, she said, have you ever thought of doing radio and TV? Have you ever thought of studying radio and TV? I said, I didn't even know I could do it. And she said, yeah, I think you'd be really good at that. So that stuck in my mind. And that kind of stuck with me and caused the change into, eventually change into radio TV as a career. So let me see, is that the most, I'm trying to think of the things that were most critical for me in high school, other than, learning that I was a lousy athlete, but a pretty good musician.
It just goes right into my next question. Like, right
Yeah.
after you graduated, so you went to the Ohio University,
Yeah.
and that's where it really did. It started taking off for you.
Yeah. Well, once I got there, I was pretty good at the violin, but if the people who know classical music, if you're going to play it, you got to practice like constant. You got to wake up and play scales every day, 4 hours at least. And I loved music, but I couldn't see myself doing that. And about after 2 quarters, I'm thinking, I don't know if this is for me, because I was making good enough grades to stay in school, but I just couldn't see myself making this my career. And then what my teacher said, Mrs. Cassad, said, you ought to try radio and TV. And I saw as an elective that they had a course, Introduction to Radio and TV in my spring quarter, the last quarter of my freshman year. And I took it. And when I got introduced to it, I said, this is what I want to do. And so, I had to tell my violin teacher that I was going to change my major. And so I dropped the scholarship and just took out another loan and started studying radio TV. And I'll tell you, that was when I got serious about school, because before then, I just made good enough grades to kind of get by, kind of get in. I wasn't in the top third of my class or anything. I just made them just well enough to get in. Now, Ohio University has changed. They are far more selective now. Back then, you could get in pretty easy, right? So I got in, first year skated by, second year, when I started, all of a sudden, everything fit together for me. Suddenly I wanted to study history. I wanted to study English. I wanted to study language. I wanted to study electronics. I wanted to know the math that I needed to know electronics. I mean, everything, I just wanted to soak it up. And so in my freshman year, I was like hanging out at the parties, like on the weekends. My sophomore year, I was at the library hitting the books, because I had found this thing that was like really interesting to me. Plus, my parents just knew I was going to be a musician. They were kind of wondering if I had done the wrong thing, dropping in scholarship. And so I did feel a little bit of pressure to like make that happen. But those classes were all consuming for me, and I excelled. I remember there was this one class that they intentionally made hard as kind of a weeding out period, RTV 200. And I aced it, because I just had an ability to be able to write a script, be able to visualize it, and then be able to put all the pieces together. You have to look, okay, you have 3 cameras. How are you going to tell this story with 3 cameras? And you have to plan that out. And then you have to, when you put the headset on, you got to be able to say, okay, ready, camera 1, take 1. And then you bring up the audio, bring up that theme, and, ready 2, take 2. And while stuff is going on. And so I excelled at that. And one thing, led to another. And the other thing that I excelled at was forensics, which was, speaking. And that goes back to my grade school days. When I was in 2nd and 3rd grade, they had you get up and make a morning talk. And it was never a problem for me. I could like kind of organize my thoughts and deliver them well. So I was in, for forensics. I think I won one of the weekend contests where it was extemporaneous speaking. They just gave me you get in a room and they give you a sentence or something like that, and they give you like maybe 3 minutes to kind of formulate something, and then you turn around and you give them a speech, 5-minute speech. And I did, and I won. So that just kind of developed. I didn't think at all about news, which would become my eventual career. I mean, I thought about this whole thing of producing and directing, but they kept telling me, they said, there's no way you're going to walk out of college and go straight into a producing or directing job. So I said, okay, well, this is what I can do well. So let me see, I want to make sure that I don't miss anything from my college years, because the other thing was that I still kept up my violin. Even though I was studying radio and TV, I still kept the violin up and still played. And then I started this thing where I helped to start some other students of mine, a gospel choir. And we had a concert. And so they needed something to kind of break up the program. And so I played a version of Amazing Grace on my violin. And that started a trajectory for me, because that's what a lot of people in Cleveland know me for, because I'm playing for weddings and funerals and anniversaries and stuff like that. And they want me to play these hymns that I play kind of bluesy style, sometimes, kind of country style, sometimes kind of rock style, sometimes light Latin, and so that kind of launched that when I was still at OU.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you, though. That, like, you kind of answered my question again. Did you have like a solo career at all? Were you kind of like performing
Mhm.
on the side? What was going on?
Well, back then, I mean, I was just playing by myself, solo, and I was, of course, I was playing with the orchestra there because if you were taking lessons, you had to play in the orchestra. I wanted to keep taking lessons, um, but what the choir began, people in the choir began to know was every year they would ask me to play another song, and I would come up with another song. Um, and so we went on tour, like to Southwest on our spring break to like Texas, Oklahoma, um, St. Louis, and we would play at some colleges and stuff like that. And people said, "Who is that guy who plays the violin?" So um, that's kind of, you know, what I saw, that I could play some classic. I could play Bach, Mozart, Beethoven, but that didn't connect with people as deeply as when I played, Amazing Grace, Precious Lord, all these old hymns, and would do them my way and play it like I heard it in the church, right? Because they sang it soul style. They didn't sing it, like amazing, like amazing grace. That's kind of how. So I would give voice to that on the violin, and it would really connect with people. Like, so wow, I never heard a violin played like
That's pretty interesting.
that.
And I'm thinking too at the same time, man, you have all these like just these gifts to play music and stuff. And at the you were paying, loans and stuff. You probably could have been teaching and probably making like a little side hustle with it.
uh,
But you
I
probably
don't
didn't
know that
have
I
time.
I don't know that I would have time at that time because I was so busy. Um, I just remember always being on the run. And that's most of my life. I just fill up my schedule. I have taught every now and then. I taught for maybe 5 years before the pandemic hit, um, and just work with a number of music projects. But I mean, everything from writing the music. I mean, I kind of taught myself how to score. I wrote for an orchestra. Um, could do that. And I would get a book and I'd say, how do you score for woodwinds? Like, where do you write the flute and the oboe and the clarinets and the bassoon? And, how do you score those so that it sound good? And I would look at it and, okay, all right, well, let me try this. And when I heard it, it sounded good.
Now, with everybody hearing like just you playing and asking about you, did you get a lot of people wanting you to perform at their place or
Eventually, jumping ahead here to, my, later years when I was, um, I'm trying to remember what started me on it as after I got out of school, because took you up to my college years, and after I graduated there, uh, I started news at a radio station in Cleveland, and the reason why I started was because um, the counselors at OU told me that you know um, it's really hard to get straight into TV. What we suggest is trying to get a position in radio, and whatever they offer you, take it, because once you get in the door, then you can move around. You can, even if you're not a salesperson, if you get into sales, well, you're in the building. And then if you're a good DJ, they might put you on the air, that kind of thing. So I made a tape and sent it around to some stations. I had a plan on the East Coast, and the station that responded to me was WJMO, which I had listened to. It's an R&B station in Cleveland. And but they said that the opening was in news. Well, I didn't know anything about news. I mean, to me, news was like boring. And secondly, I couldn't read 2 sentences of copy of written copy without stumbling. And for some reason, this guy took me on. Lynn Tolliver, people in Cleveland know him well. Um, he he took me on as an intern. So I would drive from Mansfield to Cleveland at 70 miles every day. I wasn't getting paid, but I would come in and I would just record. I would practice. I would take rip news copy and just read sentence after sentence after sentence after sentence, and I would make a tape. And then at the end of the day, he would come and listen to it and would give me some pointers on it. And then I'd do that the next day. Did it for 2 months and unpaid, and staying at my folks' house, and lost my voice because I was doing it so much. And I asked him, I said, so you're going to hire me or what? Should I go somewhere else? And he goes, well, I think we can take you on part-time. So I got a part-time job, and was just enough for me to move and rent a room in a house with an elderly couple, right? I rented the upper room, and they let me use, there was an upstairs bathroom, and they had another renter in the house, and then I could use their kitchen and their washing, stuff like that. So I survived for like a year with them, and the couple eventually passed away. And then by that time, they had made me full-time at the radio station, and I was better. I could read, I could read the copy, and I had started reporting, and I learned how interesting that was. I mean, I kind of caught the news bug, because the more I would cover stuff, I go, wow, this is kind of interesting. If I could explain it better. So I started reporting my own way, and it seemed to connect with people. So then I moved into my own apartment and started from there.
And I'm just thinking, okay, what gas prices being high right now,
Mhm.
and people are probably wondering, this guy's driving back from Mansfield to Cleveland. How much were you paying?
Well, remember, this was before, I'm figuring you're probably young enough to be my grandson. Um, Back in 1970, well, let me say, I graduated in 77. This was before it was called the oil crisis, the Arab embargo. I think of around, it's about late 70s or something like that. Gas was 30 cents a gallon, right? And then after the oil embargo, I think it went up to maybe 75 cents. A dollar, and we thought that was outrageous. It's kind of like now, when you see it going up to $5, people say, oh, there's no way it should be that way. Well, that's how it was back then, because people were used to paying 30 cents a gallon, and then all of a sudden it goes up to $1. They're going like, this, this is crazy. But so I was paying, as I remember, maybe 75 cents a gallon. But of course, they had a big tank. So, whatever that works out, and I had an old 1965 Ford Custom, which was a gas guzzler. It may have gotten 12 miles to the gallon. I may have spent $20, a day, driving back and forth. My parents were good enough that they supported me, because they didn't have any income. So they kind of supported me until I got the job. Then I had to support myself. So
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Like, he
yeah,
wasn't working, he was just an intern, so.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, they were good, and then I wasn't goofing off. They knew I was serious about what I was doing, and they were glad that I just had an opportunity to maybe, get in the field that I had spent so much time studying for.
And I'm just thinking too, your dad discovered it, seen it at such a young age, and was like, all right, we are back from the commercial break,
Yeah.
and we are talking about commuting back and forth from Mansfield to Cleveland, and you're beginning to talk about, well, it was an intern job. It's like
Yeah.
your parents opened you.
Right. Right. And I think you mentioned, my dad he was so proud that I was pursuing, um, the path that I had chosen, the radio and TV path, that I had landed at least an internship someplace. And I think they came up to, let me see, once I made it on the air, they came up to hear me and watch me, like parents will do, and I remember them standing back behind the window in the radio station and seeing me. And he talked to the program director who had hired me, and the program director said, I think he's got something special, So of course, my dad is just, oh yes, he's, um, So yeah, for my dad, it was something. And then it was really meaningful to him that I had begun. I think I showed up at a big convention, a church convention, downtown Cleveland one night. Somebody invited me, and somebody whispered that there's this violin player in the audience. You ought to have him come up and play Amazing Grace. And so I came up and I played it. And afterwards, all of these people came up and they wanted to get my number. And so I was playing, around the area, and I was playing in churches, and my dad was very proud of that. Um, so, I had these two things that were kind of developing: music and broadcasting.
So, and that's where it really begins for you. I mean, I kind of like, okay, maybe somebody is wondering right now too. You was driving home, and what did it sound like when you first heard your voice on the radio? Like a rerun? How was that to you?
Oh man. I mean, it still sounds weird to me when I hear it. I couldn't, let me see. It didn't sound good to me. Well, you know what? I had heard it when I was in college, and because I was on the radio in college too, just kind of, just messing around. And I remember I had done this one project for a class, and I had been able to change my voice to make it sound like the guys that I had heard on the radio. And I said, wow. I said, that sounds pretty good. And the other students who were in radio and TV, in that major, they said, wow, you really, that really sounds professional. So that was one thing. Then when I started getting on, commercial radio, and we would make tapes for the next morning. Back then it was tape. And to wake up and hear myself on the radio, it was weird because when I heard, I've been hearing my own voice in my own head for so many years. And for me, it didn't quite sound as cool as the other people that I heard on the radio. They seemed to have more, I don't know, flair, style, whatever. And with me, it just felt like, wow, you don't sound as cool as they sound. But you still have a job, and people like what you do, so
You're
keep
still
up,
working, yeah.
yeah, just work it. So keep working it. And I eventually got used to it. But even now, I'll do a project and I'll go. So no, it didn't sound like that in my head. When I listen to it back again, I go, okay, it's okay. It just didn't sound like it sounded to me when I was coming out of my head.
I was just had to ask the question, man, because I've been there as well. Like hearing the voice, and you're like, man, I thought it sounded a lot cooler.
Yeah,
Then you're like,
yeah.
what the?
And then I had to find my own voice because um, I was trying to make it low, like, hey, but that's not my real voice. And then I heard people saying to me after a while, people said, yeah, you have a really distinctive voice. And I go, oh, I guess, okay. And then, I mean, as years went by, I heard other people who had distinctive voices, like the actor Danny Glover, right? They started using him in documentaries because he had a voice kind of like this, and it was really distinctive, And that's how. And if I had a voice like that, I probably would have thought, oh man, that sounds terrible. But it had a real raspiness and had a real character to it. And so then I said, okay, well, whatever it is that you're spinning, go ahead, do it.
You mentioned him. I'm surprised he didn't say his famous quote. Damn, I'm getting too old for this.
Yeah, right, exactly. Right. That's the guy. That's the guy.
Damn, I'm getting too old for this. I was like, well, everybody would have caught that right away.
Yep, yep. Well, but when I heard him was on, I heard him on some PBS specials, and to hear him, because I mean that was a funny line, right? And that was kind of that whole series with him and with Bruce Willis, I think. They did some movies together. Was it Bruce Willis?
No, I don't think
Yeah,
it's Bruce Willis. I think it
somebody else.
Mel Gibson.
Mel Gibson. That's what. Yeah, right. It was him and Mel Gibson. And to hear him, doing a serious narration and still have that same Danny Glover sound, I said, "Wow, that's really unique."
See, nowadays everybody's thinking like Morgan Freeman.
Right,
Like, if I'm gonna have anybody narrate for me, it's gonna be Morgan Freeman.
right. He good. And before him, James Earl Jones,
Yeah,
was.
he's
I
still
mean,
actually around. He's still doing his thing.
yeah, and he's got, he's like an institution, you know.
Just in case anybody's not sure who James Earl Jones is. Mufasa, Blanky, come on.
Yeah, well, he's the one, Duke, I am your father.
Simba.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, he did
uh,
Darth Vader, yeah.
yeah, Darth Vader. Yeah, he was also. This is CNN. Yeah, but do they? I don't know if they still use that though.
For which
I
one?
haven't heard it. CNN. He used to be the voice of CNN. He'd always say, "This is CNN." This is back in the '80s,
No,
'90s.
right.
Yeah, so I haven't heard him in years. Um, but I heard there's a show called 30 for 30 on ESPN, and I was watching a thing last night about Deion Sanders, the great football player, and it was narrated by Ludacris,
He was on
the
radio.
rapper. Yeah, man, he sounded great. He has a distinctive voice, and so that's what people are looking for now. I mean, when you see the Disney movies, it's about being able to bring a character, that character sound to the voice. Um, I saw? I finally got around to seeing Despicable Me, and uh, not the voice of the main villain, but the what's his name? He was in The Office. You see his face, can't think of his name. Famous actor. Anyway, he did the
Are you
voice of.
talking about the newest one?
Well,
Group?
no, it was actually the first one. Steve Carell.
Yeah,
Steve Carell does the voice of like the kind of the weird villain.
Group.
But again, it's all
I think
about
it's
bringing
yeah.
bringing a special voice, having some kind of character to your voice.
Now, did you ever dip your toes into that? Doing like voiceover?
You know, someone asked me to do it once or twice, and for this project, I didn't have the voice they were looking for, so it kind of ended there. I've never tried to make a career or even a side career out of voiceovers. I know some people have requested, I've gotten, now that I think of it, because I've been around a while, I maybe have done 3 projects where I actually got paid to voice it. They wanted my voice on it, but it's not something, regular anymore. First you have to join the AFTRA union, and you got to pay dues, and then you have to make sure that you get enough work, and you'll be reading stuff for things, all around the country. You might have to read a political ad for something in Des Moines, Iowa, and you have to, Joe Jones just can't be trusted,
Right.
that's how you make money at that. And then as far as acting, I was never a trained actor, so they're looking for people who have dramatic training, and they can bring that to the voice, and I've never been asked to do that.
You were always the guy behind the camera. You're the producer. You were making
Right. Well, but I mean, I was on the news for like 30 years in Cleveland, and so I was in front of the camera, and that's why some people would ask if I could do voiceovers. funny now, you know, for the last 13 years, I've been working in government at the Cleveland Clerk of Court's office, and I'm answering things from the public. And so you know, they say, are you the same guy that was on TV? And I said, yeah. And they said, I recognize your voice. So I said, wow, because I haven't been on the air since 2008. And it's flattering that people still remember me. I don't even know how you know me.
Life is beautiful, man. We just crossed
Yeah,
paths.
yeah. So
Now, and somebody wants to know, 30 years of being on TV, being in front of that camera,
mhm.
was it harder walking in the public eye because you were on the news, or were you able to live normal?
I was able to live normal, and I think because I didn't act any differently, and I was involved in the community. Like people, I wasn't somebody who only came out occasionally. You know, I was really involved in my church. People, and you know, especially in Cleveland's Black community, they knew me because I would be in the schools doing career days. I would be, you know, in the churches for weddings and for funerals and playing for people. Suburbs, you know, they people would ask me to show up for things, and I just show up for them. So um, what? Let me see when. I do remember what was weird was okay. I was on the news. I I was an old hippie at heart, and I always thought it was kind of silly that I should have to wear a suit and a tie to be taken seriously. And but that was kind of the dress that you were expected. And so I said one day, you know, "Oh, I'm not gonna wear. I'm not gonna wear a tie. I'm gonna wear a bow tie because nobody was wearing a bow tie back then." So I remember standing in the a grocery store line, and there were this a GQ magazine, and there were these young guys with these bow ties on, and they look. I said, "Wow, they don't." I always thought bow ties make you look nerdy, and these guys didn't look nerdy. They look really cool. So I said, maybe that's a look." So one day, our station was going through a strike. The photographers were striking, and so nobody was watching the station. And so I thought, you know what, I'm gonna put on that bow tie. And so I put it on, and I did a report with the bow tie, and I came back, and the station was going nuts. Like people going, "Whoa, did you see that bow tie, man?" And this one anchor told me, she said, "That ought to be your thing. You ought to like wear a bow tie all the time." And I go, "I can't wear a bow tie all the time. I can't be the bow tie guy." And she says, "I'm telling you." She says, "That really works for you." So I started wearing them once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week. After a while, I wore it for a solid month. And then I wore a long tie because I didn't want to be known as the bow tie guy. And then people said, "What's that?" You know. And so I became the bow tie guy. And the defining moment, well, there were a couple of them. I was in a Brown Steelers game in the old stadium. And I was in front of the dog pound. This was the original dog pound. And you know how you do, you know, you're doing reports from down on the field. And it was during a break. And I was in front of the dog pound, and there was a timeout, and I was doing my report. And somebody in dog pound starts going, "Oh, B, oh, B, oh, B." And the dog pound starts chanting, "Oh, B, oh, B." I'm going, whoa. Because I'd been on the air for like 3 or 4 years and nobody started, but this bow tie. I said, "It's the tie. People are connecting with the tie." And then the other time was there was this outside of Cleveland, there's a suburb called Strongsville, and there was this. I think there was this guy who had gotten invited to the NBA halftime to shoot a shot for like $10,000 or something like that. You know, he was from Strongsville basketball team. And so I went to the house where the whole team was hanging out to witness their buddy shooting this shot. And so I show up at the door, and the guy goes, "Hey guys, it's Obie, man." He says, "Hey, can I touch the tie?" And they're all like, "Can I touch the tie?" And I go, "Yeah." They're like touching the tie and high fiving each other. "Hey man, I touched the tie." And I said, "Man, this tie is crazy." So now that was, and so it became a thing where I remember once in the paper, I was the answer to a crossword puzzle, like line, like, famous for his bow ties, blank Shelton, or, like the letters were missing, and I still have copies of the paper. And I go, whoa, this is, and then I was answered to a trivia question or something in the paper, in the comic section. And then, some magazines and stuff like that. And like, because I was playing the violin and I had the bow tie, and there was an article called "Man with Two Bows," bow tie. So so that was crazy during the talking 90s, maybe, about then. But in answer to I it was, I mean, I got used to it, and my wife got used to it. We'd go into a grocery store, go shopping, and the cashier says, "Oh, Mr. Shelton, hi, how are you?" And they say, "Well, this is my wife, Wendy," because she always felt like they would, ignore her. And so I just had to learn how to make sure that they were recognizing her.
Smart man.
And so that was the extent of the celebrity thing. It was, every now and then I would get the treatment. I remember I came to a few concerts and they, put me right up front. That was nice.
Just thinking though, man, how wild that is. Just from
Yeah,
wearing a bow tie, like how it
yeah,
just became like an
yeah.
overnight.
Right. Well, I mean, over 30 years, well, but I wasn't wearing the bow tie all 30 years. Let me see. I was, because the first, let me see, 77, 87. Yeah, the first 10, yeah, I started wearing the bow tie in like 86. So that was like the 86 to 2006. Yeah, it was a little more than 20 years that I had the bow tie on. So
So once you finally removed the bow tie, was everybody
well,
like sad?
well, I mean, I my my career ended in broadcasting when during the recession of 2009, like 2008, 2009, when they had the housing crisis, and we almost went into a depression. The country did, and my contract was up at Channel 3, and I remember the station manager told me, we don't know if we're going to be able to stay in business, and we can't afford you anymore. And so I didn't get renewed. That was 2008. My last story was the election of Barack Obama. And so I remember covering that, and people, in Cleveland's East Side dancing in the street and everything. And so then I ended up, well, for a year I tried to do my own projects, my own video projects. And I got some, but not enough to support me. And then I got this government job working for the clerk of court's office, but I would still play. And it's funny because I would show up sometimes without my bow tie, and people were very disappointed. Like they go, we want Obie, we came to see the whole. So I recognize, and I still recognize, when I'm showing up for an event I'm going to play or I'm going to speak, I wear the bow tie because that's what people want. So
So,
you gotta brand, you gotta keep the brand.
but I was thinking to myself too. At the same time, it's kind of like a Superman deal. You take off the bow tie, you're just a normal dude.
That's exactly it. And I've learned that, man, show up with the bow tie, and
Want people to recognize you? Put on the bow tie.
right, yeah. Yeah, and especially if they sit, if I'm wearing a t-shirt or turtleneck or something like that, then that really throws them off.
They're like,
And then I didn't have the beard when I was on the air. But I'm amazed. I mean, like this past weekend, I'm in the grocery store line, and lady says, "You're Obie Shelton, aren't you?" And I go, "Wow, yeah, I'm flattered, you know." And I said, "You recognize me with the beard and everything?" She says, "I can see you, you know." And so,
so once you retired, though, what'd you end up doing?
well, I mean, I've been working at the Cleveland Clerk of Court's office for like 12, 13 years now, and I just last week completed a master's degree in nonprofit administration. So I'm kind of looking to see if I have one more stop in me because I still have a lot of energy. I have a lot of passion, and I would like to direct or help direct a nonprofit, probably in the arts or a neighborhood kind of deal. Um, that would be uh, that's what I'm looking forward to do in whatever years I have left.
How does it feel to you, like living in a time now where probably like it was probably harder in your time coming up in the business and just being able to get a gig, just be able to get on the air, get on, just getting out there in the public. Now it's so easy that you can just get on YouTube. You can, do pretty much anything. How does that feel to you? How do you feel about that?
Well, it's the business is more open, it's more democratic in that, you know, you can just get on and kind of make your own, make your brand. And that's good. It's hard to get the kind of viewership that will sustain you. You just I heard a report on this where the influencers, for the past 5 or 6 years, are having to come to grips with the whole thing of what you have to do to sustain that, right? If you start letting people into your private life now, yeah, you're going to get the clicks, but you're going to lose something of yourself. And after a while, you start saying, okay, you know what? I don't want to keep doing outrageous things or letting people into the whatever outrageous part of my life because I want to like have a real life. And so a lot of the influencers are having second thoughts about whether they want to, continue this because at first it was like cool. I mean, it was kind of the new thing. Well, people have gotten used to it, and so you have to really make a splash or have some kind of really unusual take that can sustain itself. I mean, people will hang with you for 6 months, 9 months, maybe, and then they'll go, "Okay, I'm tired of that." And so, yeah, but, back when I was in the business, the it was a professional model where you had professional information and entertainment brokers, right? If you wanted to if you wanted information, if you wanted entertainment, you had to go through the brokers, the companies. You watch TV or get a record, or that some corporation is put together. Well, now, I mean, you can scroll through Instagram or TikTok or whatever, and if somebody catches your fancy, maybe they catch it today, and then you see somebody else, and maybe you'll come back to, maybe you'll subscribe, but maybe you won't, and then maybe you'll find somebody else to subscribe to. So it's very
Preach.
it, yeah, it's thin in that the allegiances don't run deep. But it's another, people can get on. People always ask me, if how can I get on? I go, well, see if you can establish a presence online, see if people will watch you. And once you get people watching you, then the people um, who who want to make money will come to you because they go, here's somebody who has an audience. And if you have an audience, then that's what they're looking for. They're looking for people who can get people's eyes to them, because once they get your eyes to you, then they can get eyes to a product. Interesting, I mean, YouTube, when it first started, I mean, you could listen to a whole concert, right, without being interrupted. Well, now there's, every 10 minutes they'll throw up an ad, unless you pay the premium, but then YouTube makes the money. So, it's all about just, everybody trying to, make a living.
Now, if anybody's wondering, do you plan on doing any like side stuff, like having your own podcast, or do you have a podcast, or
I don't have
a
a
channel?
podcast. What I do is I have been doing videos for startups, nonprofit businesses, nonprofit organizations in Cleveland, to kind of help them summarize what they do and give people an inside look. So, for some of those, it has worked out well, and others just don't know how to use it on social media. So that's what I've been doing. I guess I could morph into podcasting, I guess, if I wanted to, or if I got the urge to do it. It's just that it's hard. The old parameters are in my blood. We had, I mean, you would never do an interview this long on, in broadcasting. You had to do it in, maybe 20 minutes. Some people have asked me to do some interviews on their shows that they have on the internet, so I'll do that because I know how to interview people. And if you tell me how long you want, it 10 minutes, okay. You want 20 minutes, okay. You want 30 minutes, okay, I can do that. But as busy as I am, I don't. I hadn't considered doing the podcasting thing. It's too hard to get an audience. But who knows? Maybe if I did it, maybe I'd get an audience. Who knows?
You just got to put that bow tie on, man.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, do the bow tie.
There you go. You'll be set. All right. As we begin to start wrapping this thing up, you got the talent to play. Would you be interested in, performing a little bit?
Yeah, I can play for you. This Zoom doesn't like the violin so much; it distorts the sound. But I've learned that I can't like give it full juice. I have to kind of play softly, or else it'll start distorting. But yeah, if you give me a minute, I'll try to play a little bit.
Yeah.
My violin, and
oh, you forgot the bow tie. I'm just kidding.
Now, if you want to, I can go get a bow tie and tie it for you. I gotta go up. I gotta go upstairs. I can tie it for you if you want. Oh, I got 10 minutes left. Wait, you want me to just play? Or you want me to get the bow tie?
Oh, you can just play.
All right.
Unless you really want to get the bow tie.
So what, I'll play, and if you want me to tie it, I'll show you. Because do you know how to tie a bow tie?
No, you can teach me.
Yeah, people often say, "Is that pre-tie?" I go, "No, I never wear a pre-tie bow tie. It's a real bow tie. Let me see. See if this doesn't distort. I think something. Well, let me play the song that everybody knows before. Is it distorting?
No, it sounds pretty good.
Okay. So that gives you an idea.
Very well done, sir. You're not kidding though. It does have that sound to it.
Yeah, it's these blues.
Now, I have a question though. Is how long did it take you to learn that? To just come up with it?
Well, you mean how to play it or that particular song?
That song, just learning how to
Well,
play it
yeah,
and playing it in that
I
style.
started. Yeah, I started when I was 7, and I would. Let me see. I was first started was. Yeah, that's my first song that I learned how to play. And then I would start playing. Let me see.
The
Like
basics.
Mozart and stuff like that. So after about 3 years, I noticed that I could kind of like my fingers started to move fast. I said, "Wow, After playing a lot of music, and I noticed they started responding for me. So 3 years, and by then I was 10, and then but I'd say what you heard me playing there, where I'm playing, and I'm pulling the sound out of it. And that started maybe when I was about 18, because I would hear people sing like that. And I said, well, how does that sound? Right? Right? So it was just about being able to pull out of the violin what I was hearing people sing.
Hey, it's pretty good. Now, what's your favorite to play?
Years, yeah. Huh?
What's your favorite song to play?
Well, Amazing Grace, the one that I showed you. That's the one that I've been playing the most. I'm working on another classical song. I'm trying to think of one that. Let me see.
Have you come up with your own yet?
Several years ago, I came up with one. Yeah, I can't remember how it went. Was something like a. Something like that, but I can't remember. It never kind of took off. I've done my own arrangements where I see. And just playing with groups, it's more of if you have a solo, then you just kind of improvise. That's what I was trying to do at the beginning, but I didn't have any inspiration because I had no chords. See, it's hard to. I'm not hearing any chords, so it's hard. I'm just kind of making up sounds,
Yeah.
making up notes. But when I was hearing Amazing Grace, right, I'm hearing all the chords in my head, and I can kind of play around them.
Because you played it so much that it's there.
Yeah.
And heard it, growing up. I could only imagine. It's just natural.
Right. And I was in high school, Smoke on the water. Everybody said, "Whoa!"
Like, how did he do that?
Yeah.
Now, did anybody ever request you to do some like Jimi Hendrix?
I can't remember that, but I mean, he played the starter. That's kind of how the kind of thing he brought. And then I don't know if you've ever heard his Woodstock. He had the bombs bursting in there.
Very well done.
Just messing around. So, well, we're about to shut off in about a minute.
Yep. As we wrap this up, the final questions are coming.
Yes.
Cat or dog?
Dog.
Oh.
Dog.
Any reason?
Cat's too hard to understand, man. They said dogs have owners, cats have staff.
Well said. Best way to put it. If you could travel anywhere in the world, where are you going?
Well, I'm waiting to go to Ghana, Africa. That's where I'm waiting. We had an exchange student from there, and so I'd like to see her again.
And then, the final question. If anybody wants to get a hold of you or get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Obed Shelton, OBED, which is my real name, OBED Shelton at gmail.com. Obed Shelton at gmail.com.